D.C. She has an independent psychotherapy practice which focuses on individual adults. The issues addressed include depression, anxiety, stress management, grief, life transitions, work-related stress, and relationship problems. She's a life coach and creator of a mental wellness workshop series entitled Happy and Healthy You. These and other workshops offered by Dr. Kern focus on reducing stress, increasing self-empowerment, self-awareness, and the momentum to change. Dr. Kern has also facilitated a variety of trainings and workshops for job training programs aimed at imparting emotional management skills, increasing self-esteem and self-confidence, and enhancing motivation as well as self-empowerment. Her specialties include self-esteem enhancement, stress reduction and stress management, promoting self-empowerment, and success orientation. Her PhD is from the Catholic University in clinical psychology, and her undergraduate work was also at Catholic and Boston University, where we have some overlap there. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kern.
I want to make sure I get this. Okay, how do I get out of your?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Many of you are probably in transition for a variety of reasons. I mean, somebody, and you don't need to identify yourself here, but just think about it. If you've lost a job, then most likely that's a painful experience for most folks. Okay. And now some of you are in transition because you voluntarily left a job. Now, to some degree, that might have been a painful experience. I've been there, done that. I quit a job, and I quit a job because I decided I was going to avoid burnout, and I could see it coming. So I realized it was no longer a good fit, and I realized that life was too short for me to be miserable going to work every day. And so here I am doing what I love to do, and what's pursuing my own passion. So I talk about the emotions of losing a job, and I want to go there first. I want to start with that first, and I don't want to dwell on that, because today's workshop is going to be about ways to turn that momentum around. Most of you are here, as we just listened to, because you want to network, because you want to be inspired, because you want to get the support and the momentum going to, I heard somebody say very deliberately, I want to get a new job. And by the way, I usually don't use the word job when I'm working with my clients. I usually use the word position. What's the difference? Think about the two words, job, position.
Position is more interactive with other people.
Okay, absolutely.
And denotes a certain stability in the situation.
Absolutely. It's also more dynamic to have a position, or to position. In fact, the word position is a verb too, to position oneself, right? So that's one of the, it occurred to me, I said, I would really want to inspire people to see this whole process of work, because work is work, as dynamic. And so therefore I want you to strive towards a position that you want, and to position yourself to doing what you want to do. And I'm a big proponent of doing what you want to do to the best of your ability. So some of us are more fortunate than others to have the training and the luxury to be able to do that. And even if you have work that is primarily about meeting your basic needs, it is important to also have some balance in your life. So we're going to talk about that all the way. And by the way, those of you who've seen my presentations before, okay, why not? I'm not getting that. Some of you who've seen my presentations before realize that I don't like to lecture. I want this to be an interactive forum. I want to engage people with me and also with each other. Also, I learn a lot from these presentations too that I then share with other people. So as you see, the presentation will address, first of all, the common negative emotional reactions to job loss. We want to begin to get empowered around the job loss. And this is spiritual, so I want to talk about that in particular, and we're going to do an exercise around that too. Also reclaiming a healthy sense of yourself and personal empowerment. In other words, again, getting mobilized. Just as Ken said, it is very important that you get kind of back on the horse after you've been knocked off, that you kind of regain that sense of who you are, and also regain your sense of being able to make things happen. Obviously, to some degree, there are going to be some things we can't control, right? They're outside of our control. However, it's very important to recognize that somebody talked about interactive, that interactive dynamic of when you show up, things meet you, right? If you're sitting in the four walls of your house, it's very likely that a job's just going to bust through your door and land in your lap, right? Or a position, excuse me. Taking action towards successful employment search. And again, those are more of the strategic kinds of things that we're going to do. Okay, I'm not so good at this. How do we get this up? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
Instead of, we can just do this because this is where you want to be.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about this very quickly then. Common emotional reactions to job loss. And the reason I want to talk about that very deliberately is because you're not losing your mind or going crazy because you feel sadness and grief or anger or anxiety. I don't even have anger up here. Depression, guilt, and shame because you lost your job. How many of you were born in this country? Okay, what kind of work ethic do we have here? A very strong one, don't we? That's right. And so therefore, most of us were socialized to be productive, and we think in terms of being productive as having employment, being able to make a living. Most of us were raised to be self-sufficient when we became adults, right? So therefore, we attach a whole lot of our self-esteem to the work we do and the fact that we do work. So therefore, when we lose a job, it's scary, isn't it? I mean, it's scary. Some people, it certainly makes sense that you go, depression is on the upper end of sadness, but it certainly makes sense that we're sad and unhappy about most job loss. And then, of course, now this is where it really does kind of trickle into something that's a little more problematic, and that's the guilt and the shame. Now, some of us realize we may have lost a job because of something we did, maybe a mistake we made, maybe the fact that we weren't performing at our best. And so some of us have internalized that sense. And some of us are just ashamed because we lost a job. Let me share an experience with you. I used to work for, I'll call it out, DC Public Schools. Okay, so I need not say much more. And that was over 20 years ago. I was very active with the teachers union at the time, and there was a big rift. I mean, that was, well, they call it rift, reduction in force, for those of you who don't know. And I remembered at the time, because I was active with the union and was volunteering with the union, it was affecting a lot of people. The administration had decided to lay off a whole lot of teachers who had worked for years. And so there was one, so I decided to volunteer and pull together a workshop on helping people make that transition and to deal with the emotional fallout. There was a gentleman there who had worked for 29 years. He was being let go. I think this was 2 weeks after he had gotten his notice. He had still not told his family. That's what guilt and shame looks like. Because he internalized that negative sense of having lost the job. And so it is very important that we move from that posture so that we can feel more energized, feel better about ourselves, not internalize. I talk about the power of the pain. What's the purpose? So it's important not to give power to the pain. It's a circumstance you're in. Don't let the circumstance define you. Okay? In other words, you get in control of it. So this is why we talk about work is what you do, not who you are. So it works on both sides. Some of us, even while we're working, and especially living in Washington, D.C., how many of you are newcomers to Washington, D.C.? Okay, how long have you been here?
About 6 months.
Oh, yeah, you're a real newcomer. Well, yes, what about yourself?
15 months.
Oh, both of them. Okay, relatively new. So what do we know about being in Washington as opposed to, how many of you are transplants? Because I'm actually a transplant from other cities. So those of you who are transplants, who've been here a little while, what do you realize about the nature of work in Washington, D.C. that differs from a lot of other cities?
It's what people talk about. What do you do? It's the first thing people ask you.
There you go. Absolutely.
It's very young. It's much younger than the other cities I've lived in. The average age is younger.
Okay, that's an interesting, that makes sense. I've been here so long, so young is a whole other concept. Yes. Any other observations?
Highly competitive.
Yes, very competitive.
It's diverse in terms of different industries.
Okay, yeah, that's
government, academic.
That's
just
true.
A lot of different.
Okay, that's a good point, because there are some cities that were very heavily used to be industrialized, or computer tech. Yeah. So those are interesting observations. Any other observations?
Transiting. There's a
That's
turnover
true.
factor
That's
that
right.
you have here that you may not see in a lot of other.
That's true. It's very transient. Yes, yes.
Very political.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very tied to the political, the government. That's true. So
Very
again,
layered.
I'm sorry.
Layered. You got local, national, and international.
That's true. So it's multi-tiered. That's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point. Yeah, even when I was in the school system, they actually have the local school system, but then they have the state educational, which is based here too. So yes, it is interesting how that works. So we're going to do an exercise right now around introducing yourself. But introducing yourself without referring to the work you did or that you do. So I would like for people to, let's see, if you could just kind of break down in groups of 3, or 2. I tell you, that makes it easy. Just turn to your neighbor and tell the person who you are. And what you do. So you see, I've already given you the cheat sheet here. Okay. Yeah, so turn around. And there was 3 people. But I want you each to have that experience. And we're going to process it.
It's like returning. I go
All right. First of all,
very small spaces to live in.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
All right, so everybody, so first of all, just some general feedback about processing that experience. First of all, just as an observer and just making observation here, I was very impressed with the level of energy I heard. Wow, that was really yes. Everybody was talking and engaged, so that's very positive. So, feedback. What was that experience like, first of all?
Extremely pleasant.
Very pleasant. Okay. All right. So, would everybody just like to now just take a brief turn, say, just sharing briefly what you shared about yourself? You don't have to. I tell you. So if people would like to volunteer. Yes. How did you introduce yourself?
I told her my name, and I really talked about more personal, because I have a lot of things in my life that I'm in transition. Newly empty nester, raised 4 boys.
Okay.
My parents are getting older. My dad actually has Alzheimer's, so we're dealing with that. And my husband and I are trying to plan ahead for retirement, possibly selling our home. And I'm trying to figure out like how do I balance all this, and I know we're not supposed to talk about work, but work part-time. So that's really what I talked about, and she and I also shared that we both wanted to work with kids.
That's what I want people to share, because again, this is a networking organization. Keep that in mind. And a lot of times what we learn about each other, and sometimes, and one of the things I like to facilitate too, is people learning about themselves. I have a lot of people, clients and folks in workshops with whom I work, and they say, oh, I never thought of it that way. This is all about your attitude, people. It's about changing your mindset. And guess what? Our minds are very powerful, aren't they? Okay, so you all know there are all kinds of references to that. As a man thinketh, right? I mean, think about how powerful that is. Other feedback about who you are and what you got in touch with, and maybe what you heard from somebody else that you were talking to.
I think what's really neat is seeing the connections on a personal level. Like we all like to sing.
Oh, okay.
Cook.
Sometimes in the shower only.
So yes, it's a way to bond and recognize that we're all human beings, not human doings. That's right, we're human beings. Yes, I saw another hand.
Connecting with someone,
Okay.
similarities.
That's right. So connecting at a whole nother level. Precisely. Yes, sir.
I would definitely say, when we connected here, both like, she likes to do yoga. I like to do martial arts. Help her let distress. How you start your morning.
There you go.
This is how you start your morning. And then, spoke a little bit about our children,
Okay.
and that.
So much like you all here, you talk about other aspects of your life. I mean, that's the whole purpose. Yes.
Yeah. So some of these ladies, and we just talked about where we were born, where we grew up, and that led to a lot of great discussions about similarities to where similarities to our hometowns, very differences and cultural differences, and yeah.
Absolutely.
And like I said, someone said it's very pleasant. Yes, it is.
And isn't that, I talk about the power of our presence as human beings. That's what you all experienced just now. That sense of connection, that sense of similarity, that sense of being able to understand and empathize with people, that desire in some cases to connect even further at times. So that's a very powerful thing, and to recognize that we are not what we do, people. What we do emanates from who we are. And it is part of a larger, our larger multidimensional self. So when we recognize that, and that's part of taking good care of yourself and overcoming this a job loss that might be painful to you, is remembering that. Is remembering that this doesn't define you. Even if you got fired. Even if you got fired because you totally screwed up.
I just had a question, and maybe you're
Yes.
going to get to this as you go on, but I will confess, it was a little bit challenging.
Okay.
Because I'm here at a networking thing. And
That's
I'm
right.
talking about
That's
job
right.
stuff.
Let's
Like you said,
talk about-
don't talk about job stuff. Like, oh, job stuff. Job stuff. but I take your point about like the value of being able to access these sort of positive and outside of the job parts of ourselves.
That's right.
But I'm like I could use some tips on how do I do that when I'm in the middle of looking for a new position and very focused on that. Like keeping in touch with that is job position.
So don't worry, I'm not in denial about what this organization is about, and the fact that most of you are in transition, hoping to find additional or new employment. So I get that. However, the first point is, again, don't let your, on either side of that coin, don't let whatever you do totally define you. I do a lot of workshops where I do go into workplaces where people are actively engaged in work, all kinds of levels of professions, and still there's a place for work-life balance. Because again, if you're giving too much emphasis to what you do as opposed to who you are, then you can get lost very easily and stressed out. And again, one of my, as a mental health professional, a big thrust of mine is helping people achieve wellness. And wellness is from the inside out, folks. I mean, our mental, spiritual, physical. In fact, I'm writing a book now that has to do with the multidimensional self-care on all those bases. So thank you. Don't worry, we're not going to forget that this is why those folks are here. But again, it is again what you do, and not getting caught up in the circumstance. Sometimes we get immersed in the circumstance and the pain of the circumstance. Let me ask this: what's the purpose of pain? Pain, P-A-I-N.
Make you stronger.
Growth.
Okay.
To act as a catalyst for change.
Thank you. If we treat it that way. See, it is about the way we regard pain. That's why I asked you a definition of it. So if you see it as a catalyst for change, in other words, if it's painful, do you want to stay in pain?
No.
Most healthy people don't. Absolutely. Now, it's what we do with that, or the way we approach it that gets so. So here's my theory. It's about acknowledging the pain. So again, going back to the very first slide where I talk about common negative emotions. It is important that we do acknowledge the pain. Because some of us, as soon as we feel pain, what do some of us do that then gets us in trouble? Cut it off, shut it down, try to hide it, look at people who, as we say, self-medicate via alcohol, via other chemicals, illegal. In other words, oftentimes they're shutting down the pain. They don't want to feel it, and they want to feel something else instead. So there's a place for pain tolerance, people, but not getting stuck in it and not giving the power to the pain. So I'm sorry, what's your name?
Janine.
I'm recruiting you for my next workshop. so as Janine said very aptly, it is about using it as a catalyst. Because if I realize, I don't like feeling this depressed. I don't like feeling down. I want to get out of this. In other words, so then I say, okay, well, great. You don't want to feel that. We can stop that. But it's not good enough just to stop it. Because then you're really stuck still. It's about wanting to feel what? What do you want to feel instead of down, scared, doubtful, depressed, ashamed? What do you want to feel at this point? Empowered, happy. How about motivated?
Yes.
Just like you were saying. How about energized?
Yes.
Because it is a job to look for a job, isn't it?
Yes.
It's work. It entails work. So it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. How do you get energized? How do you tap into that reservoir? And part of it, again, is recognizing that you have a whole lot more, and you are a whole lot more than what you do. Okay, so that's for starters. Okay, so how many of you nurture your spirituality, and how would you define spirituality, first of all?
It's a belief in something higher, a higher power than yourself.
That's part of it, yes.
I see it basically, though I'm a member of a church, I see it basically in a secular sense as being an expenditure of energy.
We are energy, absolutely. Yes.
For me, I see it as having a sense of gratitude and non-judgment for others, but also helping others when I am able.
Okay. And all of you have expressed aspects of spirituality. Let me do a little history on psychology for a minute, or the practice of psychology. There was once upon a time we weren't even supposed to breathe anything sounding like spirituality, because there was such a fear that we were going to proselytize or try to promote our religious beliefs or doctrine on someone else. And of course, that's totally unacceptable in any kind of medical or mental health practice. Then finally, and I think I will get to give credit to people finally opening up and recognizing different influences, including cultural influences. Somebody mentioned yoga. That did not originate in America, did it? I mean, that's Eastern influence, isn't it? I participate when I do in Tai Chi. Again, another Eastern. I mean, you think about a lot of the alternative medicine, medical practices like acupuncture, certain kinds of massage, they come from other cultures, many of them. And so there was that openness to recognize, wait a minute, we see things a certain way, but guess what? Our way is not the only way. And when you really kind of encompass the total of, talk about energy, the energy of humanity from around the world, wow, we've opened up to a whole nother level of healing, haven't we? I mean, I know people who have benefited from just a lot of what we call alternative medicine, and a lot of our insurance companies now are embracing it too, and actually reimbursing people for getting alternative care. So that's a powerful thing. So the way most of us in mental health practice define spirituality now is kind of your basic sense of guidance. What guides you? You talked about a value system just now, didn't you? You talked about a belief system, Michelle, just now. You talked about, in other words, having a sense of purpose. I spoke to someone who defined it this way: your sense of passion, purpose, and the possibilities. That's another way. I usually say to my clients, it's your GPS system. Think about what GPS, when I was saying it, I was really saying your guiding principle systems. But then when I stopped and thought about what an actual GPS does, what does it do? It navigates, doesn't it? It provides direction, doesn't it? It keeps you on track, doesn't it? This is what it keeps you focused, doesn't it? We're all energy, but the issue is honing in that energy, right? How do you utilize your energy? How do you direct it? So that's where I'm bringing it to this presentation. Sometimes how many of you have had something happen to you that at the time, let's move it out of the job. It might have been a previous job loss. But how many of you have had something negative that at the time felt painful, happened, and then later on it actually resulted in something that was better, or something better happened as a result of it? Anybody had that experience? That's why it's so important not to give power to the pain, not to give power to the circumstance, and recognize that the circumstance is temporary and it doesn't define you. See yourself as in it and not of it. In other words, that's why the more and more that we can begin to step aside and utilize our GPS system, whatever that is, and for many of us it may include some religious faith. For some of us, but it's a lot broader than that. It's your value system. It's your sense of morality, your sense of ethics. It's your sense of passion. So sometimes the aha moment kicks in, right? Where all of a sudden becomes, oh, you know what? Wow, I lost that job. Thank goodness I lost that job just in time. Now I can go on that trip I've always wanted. Sometimes things like that happen. Has anybody had something like that happen? Anybody want to share an experience like that? Yes.
Yes, I'm too a DC public school casualty.
I said survivor.
I like that word better, survivor. Let me reframe that.
Thank you.
And I lost, my job was fired in 2012. And being fired allowed me to spend a lot of quality time with my mother, who was aging. And I got to spend 2 years with her, going to doctor's appointments and traveling up and down the road to see relatives in other states. And the aha was, wow, God, took away that job in time for me to spend really wonderful quality time with my mother before she passed away. And I had to keep redefining that job loss is not punishment for something I had done, but an opportunity because I really treasured that time that I had with her, just us palling around, being partners. She was my co-pilot on trips, and it was wonderful.
And sometimes in the moment it's hard to see that, but that's what I'm encouraging and challenging people to do, is to ask yourself, wow, what might this mean? What might be the meaning? Now it might mean time for me to go back and retool, time for me to go back and learn some new skills, especially if the job loss was as a direct result of some level of unsatisfactory performance. Maybe it means this job really isn't a good fit for me. Now that's what I encounter with a lot of people. Sometimes it means you've outgrown the job. I've worked with a lot of clients who have become a bit complacent, a bit too comfortable, and then, and sometimes the job loss may be something that's totally independent of them, such as organizations that restructure or get bought out or, get, reorganized. And so when they're panic stricken, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. What might this be? Is this an opportunity for you to fulfill another purpose? Sometimes I'm the one pointing out to them, sounds like to me that you could do some leadership, based upon what you're telling me. So we're going to do an exercise around this kind of thing. And again, as you've heard me say several times, rise above the situation. How can you flip this situation on its head? Let me give you an example of how actually I coached somebody into getting fired, actually. Or getting let go, I should say. This was one of my clients who she was working in a situation where there were some dynamics going on with someone between her supervisors and another coworker, and she kept coming in, upset. She was very distressed because she could feel that they wanted to push her out, essentially. And and initially I'm listening, for all the nuances and the details. It finally became pretty much clear that they wanted her gone. However, it wasn't about her performance, really. It was really more about the dynamics in the workplace and that that they were ready for a change. So I asked her. So she was so afraid. What I was working with her on was managing her anxiety. So I said, well, listen. What's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, well, I can't leave right now because I don't have a job to go to, and if I don't have a job, how am I going to make it? I said, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. I said, so why don't you do this? Since you know they want you to leave, why don't you meet with them and negotiate your departure? She thought I was crazy at first. So, however, she did follow that. She did follow my advice, and she went. The first time she went, they refused to entertain it. The second time she went, they agreed, and I think she got like a 3 or 4 month severance. So she successfully, and also she negotiated that this was no reflection on her performance, because it wasn't. So she said, and when she came back, she was thrilled because now she had gotten out of a stressful environment. Now she was getting paid to search for new employment, so she was freed up, and so it was a win-win situation. Sometimes we're in a situation, we're so busy fighting the situation, instead of looking back and saying, wait a minute, is this really working for me anyway? How can I turn this around in a way that would benefit me? How can I free myself? And what is this telling me, really? Is it telling me I'm ready to, that maybe I've outgrown this position? Is it telling me that this is not the kind of place where I'm going to be treated my best? One of the exercises I give people when they come in and they tell me how miserable they are in their current employment, and however, they're afraid to move because they don't yet have another position, and they'll say, I don't know what I want to do, or I don't know. And I look at them I said, yes, you do. I said, how can you sit here and tell me and you don't know what you want to do? Who else could tell me that? So I said, now, when you say that, guess what you've done? You've slammed the door right in your own face. So I said, so let's change some language. I like the word you use because we use that word in cognitive behavioral therapy. He said, let me reframe that. Reframe means to redefine, okay? I said, I'm not challenging you. I said, but what I want you to do is to change your perception of this difficulty. I said, yes, I acknowledge that you are having difficulty accessing really what you want to do or how to get there, perhaps. Maybe that's what it is. I said, but at least let's reframe it that way. I said, because when we say I have difficulty, now at least it leaves the door open, right? Has anybody ever overcome something that was difficult before? Hello. We can learn something that's difficult. We can learn how to, but when we say I don't know, you've just backed away from yourself. Okay? And the answer is within. So that's the first thing. So remember, you possess your own keys.
I want to throw something out since you brought that up, that 40 plus, I love it here. It's so wonderful to come here. It's wonderful to see that you're not all by yourself in this situation.
That's right.
And I always tell people that I go to 40 plus and it's black women, it's white women, it's black men, it's white women. I mean white men. It's not a demographic.
Yes.
It's really
Yes.
more we're all the same age.
Right.
You know, and it's an age transition sort of job situation. But what's nice about the exercises that you all do is sometimes you can't see what your gifts are. And someone else sees you very differently than you see yourself. You've got yourself tied into your work. And sometimes a stranger hears something different when you're talking. So when you have us, we call it pair and share. Someone hears something else and you go, wow, I never thought about it that way. So it really helps to come to places like this and talk to other people, because sometimes when you don't want to shut the door, but you've been in this rut.
That's right.
And you only see yourself in one way, and then you talk to a complete stranger, and they have a complete unbiased view of what they hear, and then that can kind of help you go, well, maybe I should explore that more. So this is a great place to come. Keep coming back.
Good. And I appreciate that observation. And again, you're on my list of recruit too. But that's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, you never know. Again, networking. So the purpose, again, within your sense of spirituality is what is your purpose? What purpose does work serve for some of you?
Pays bills. Pays the bills.
Okay, so that's one level. What's another sense of purpose? That's the only thing everybody's over here. Is anybody doing work that fulfills a higher level purpose for them? Yes.
My work is mission driven.
Okay.
Mission for societal change.
Okay.
So I get to have fun whenever I work.
Okay, and
get
that's very
paid
important
for it.
that we do reckon with where work fits in our life. For some people, they only want their work to pay the bills. They don't really care. So therefore, what they do is, in other words, they may have a bracket. Hey, okay, so I'll go work for Starbucks, or I'll go clean office buildings, because really what my passion is over here someplace else. Maybe I'm an artist or whatever. But for some people, we do want our work to fulfill that part of us. I saw another hand back. Yes.
Those two I realize are big, especially the mission and also collegiality. I think working at staying home and the isolation is really getting to me.
Okay.
And it's almost like I'd go to a workplace just to have, colleagues to work with and teams and a new environment other than my house. And not working alone or one-offs where I meet somebody for a meeting and then I never see them again. I want the consistency of, the colleagues.
What the two of you are demonstrating and illustrating is what we refer to as emotional awareness. In other words, it's important that we're in touch with who we are and how we operate. In other words, so it matters, because then we're in the driver's seat of our emotions, first of all. Okay, in other words, it puts us in the best possible position to be motivated, to be self-driven, to be self-directed, to achieve what we want to achieve, because you're in touch with what matters to you, who you are, what your strengths are. You just talked about that too. And so it is important, and we'll talk about that. So again, what is your purpose? And again, not only what purpose does this job loss represent or could represent to you, and look at the possible benefits. So I want you to think about that, and actually the exercise, I won't have you all do it here, but I want you to think about this, because the workshop, I actually have a workshop, and I'll talk about that a little later, but I do have a more in-depth workshop. This is more of a teaser today. But the workshop is going to be a 3-hour workshop that delves into this in a lot more detail and gives people a lot more individual opportunity to explore these. So stop and think about this personally, right now, just for about a minute. Not even. 90 seconds. So, how might this job loss benefit you? In other words, I want you to begin to change your mind and think about how there might be a positive purpose for this, just like you said. Yeah, that's a very common experience, that you provided somebody with more time to do something that was more meaningful to them. Spend time with an aging parent. Spend time with their children. Maybe you spend time. How many of you are considering some entrepreneurial endeavor? Maybe spend some time developing that. You know, sometimes we get so caught up in work, just like you were saying, that you get so busy that it's hard for you to make time to do the other things that are more fulfilling for you. So that might be an opportunity. Again, how might this job loss provide you with a new opportunity? Sometimes we get so deep, and like I said, I used the word complacent before. Some of us become a little too dependent on the comfort of some of the things that our workplace might provide us. And so sometimes it's kind of like holding on to that security blanket. We don't want to step out here because we're, maybe afraid of taking a risk or not trusting ourselves. So it is important that we see this as a new opportunity. And how might it free you up to use your time in a different way altogether? Maybe learn a new skill, go back to school. So stop and think about that. So instead, I want you to think about these experiences. I'm going to divide you up again into pairs of groups. And this might be a little personal, so you can get as personal or as you want or feel comfortable. And that's okay. But I really want you to get in touch with some other experience in your life that you overcame. Because that is what's going to begin to help you get in touch with what can help you get past some of these negative emotions that you may be experiencing now that might be getting in your way. So, what previous challenge did you successfully overcome? Are you I tell my clients, we measure progress in two ways. Are you in a significantly better or improved place today than you were at some previous point in time? Sometimes I even tell them to invoke the linear graph. You all know what the linear graph looks like. No. On the, okay, I'll describe it. On the vertical axis is degrees. So you have 0 to, let's just say, 100, okay? And then on the horizontal axis, going across, you have time. So I want you to think about maybe something that happened a year ago, 2 years ago. And think about, at the time that it first happened, how you would rate your ability to handle it. So 0 to 100 meaning 0, you weren't doing so well. 100, you were knocking out the park, you were okay. And see how you managed to get from whatever that painful point was to a place where you were okay. Just create that in your mind. See yourself. So that's where again, the first part of progress is, am I in a much better place today than I was before? I know I'm in a much better place than I was 20 years ago when I left DC Public Schools and was feeling burned out. Okay, now, so here's the other part that is the more empowerment piece. How did I get there? How did I get from this place of almost feeling burned out to now feeling very empowered, feeling a sense of passion, loving what I do, feeling energized? How did I get to this significantly better place? Okay, let's pair for about 3 minutes. Same groups. And I just want you to get in touch with your experience, because the goal here is for you to get in touch with what you have that gets you past your pain.
I came from an extremely background, the family situation. I don't know if I'm a better place or not. I am in some ways. I came out for self-esteem. So I have a lot of poor families. I had like that. I took on what I thought was going to try like shopping or houses.
Yeah, so I guess I did a lot of that. No, I bought a house. I went to Asia for 3 months. I got to do a lot of my own personal stuff, but I still always felt like, oh, I would have liked which is better than 30 or right. I did it for myself. So, I also, after I got fired from my job, a friend of mine introduced me to his church. I have I was not going to church for 40 years. As a child, 40 years went by. He dropped out of the church. I went to so I got some they call talk therapy, psychotherapy, talk therapy to help me with that, with childhood and other things. So it was talk therapy to I did have one while my job related. I did have one boss as a legal secretary. We don't have a lot of so you don't find the mentorship somebody employed you like you might find in the federal government or I did find one criminal defense attorney who I worked with amazing in mentoring people and encouraging another job evaluation one time I heard I felt like saying that's considered to be a character asset. They used to call personnel, now they call it human resources. You're supposed to look at me as being a resource, right? And specifically, like going to South Africa and mining diamonds. That's what you get for tanzanite. You don't go down there and mine silver. I know you go to the American Southwest. Silver mines are. So you look to me, you see the quality of the initiative. You mine it, you put it in a position where actually use it. That's what I want to tell you. The analogy of the mine. I would do that.
Okay, let's come back to this one. So again, this exercise again is a way for you to when we remind ourselves about our past success. One of the forms of therapy I use is called cognitive behavioral therapy. The term you use, reframe, as I said, is just another fancy term for redefine. Basically, it's about redefine something in your mind that might be a situation is painful. So the first exercise 1, is about, how can I turn this, what is on the surface or seems to be a negative situation, into something that could work for me. And then this is then how you find and reach deep down, and hopefully it speaks to some of the questions you were asking about, well then what are the strategies we can utilize to overcome the fear, the doubt, the pain, the sadness of the loss. And it's important that you grieve that. In other words, it's important that you grieve the loss of the job, especially if you really liked it and enjoyed it. However, you wouldn't be here unless you were interested in moving on to new employment. or to a new opportunity. So it is important that then we reach back and find that body of evidence. That's what we talk about in cognitive behavioral therapy. What's your evidence? When we start telling ourselves something that's negative, you know, a lot of times it's based on a distorted way of seeing ourselves. And so it is important that we get in touch with, you know, whether or not we're treating ourselves fairly and accurately. So being able to recognize, wait a minute, I have overcome things in the past that might have been challenging at the time, that might have been very painful. And guess what? Not only did I survive it, sometimes I may have really thrived as a result. I heard Ken say sometimes it makes you stronger. Being able to see your strengths, being able to see the qualities that have enabled you to overcome. In psychology, a big term nowadays is resilience. In other words, we may get knocked down, but the goal is not to stay down. The goal is to get back up. So what enables us to get up? What do some of you find out about yourselves and each other? Can we share a little bit? What are some of the qualities that have enabled you to get up from some of your negative experiences in the past? Yes?
Part of it is the new awareness that comes from the situation.
Okay.
It removes blind spots maybe that you might previously have had. There's a lot of new awareness that you discover going down this painful path. You didn't choose it, it is what it is.
Yes.
And suddenly you start learning all this other new stuff, or at least you become aware about this new stuff,
Okay.
which then empowers you in a sense to maybe consider even a completely different. I mean, I never thought about a career pivot. If you talked to me about a career pivot 5 years ago, I would have laughed. And now it's a reality. It could actually really happen. So there's a lot of positivity that comes out of it.
Okay, good, thank you. And that is about opening our minds and changing our minds. Yes. Other feedback about what you kind of learned and experienced from each other.
Well, what you just said, but I think adaptability and being open to change is important. And when I think about the answer to this particular exercise, it did have to do with being open to something new and being adaptable.
Okay, good, good. Yes.
My health.
Your health. Can you
Basically, it was a stressful situation. I resigned without a job because my health was more important. And the environment was just too stressful. So I planned, like I told her, I saved money for 2 to 3 months. I was very optimistic about the job search. I was very young at the time, but I was optimistic. I could find something in about 3 months, so I saved for 3 months. And I did find something in 3 months. I took a chance.
Okay. Okay.
But I saw the signs early, this is not going to change. This is a leadership issue. I can't make this change by myself. So I ended up resigning, and I have no regret.
Okay. So it worked out.
Yes.
And that is, and so you embodied several things. You talked about being open to the possibilities. You also talked about being able to recognize some realities. That is important too. It is important to recognize that there are some things that we cannot change, but not to let that defeat us or to thwart us. Instead, to deal with that reality. I'm talking about acceptance. You know, acceptance doesn't mean capitulating, folks. Acceptance doesn't mean that you like whatever the negative situation is. I've worked with clients who are in what anybody would define as a toxic workplace. I mean, when I hear it, I call it out. I say, oh yeah, you're in a toxic work environment. I said, so let's get real. I said, so let's deal with some realities. What are the realities there? What is it that you can and cannot change? How many of you know about the Serenity Prayer? It's about the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and cannot change. That's what brings us serenity. And some of us keep fighting against the brick wall and wondering why we're feeling frustrated. Instead of being open to some new possibilities, putting our health, something that really matters to us first, in other words, reprioritizing, that's another strategy. What really matters to you? You know, reorder your priorities sometimes. Sometimes that might have you actually leave a job. Or embrace the free time you have now that you don't have a job and utilize it in a different way. And so again, how do we overcome these situations to get to a good place? Anybody else have any strategies they wanted to share with others? Yes.
Just forgiveness, the ability to forgive those who unintentionally, which comes out, causing you stress. Just differences in personality and expectations and so on.
So who benefited from you forgiving someone?
Both of us.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. we tend to forget that we're really the biggest beneficiary though. Because we can forgive someone who may not even be here anymore. I mean, think about that. And really, you're freeing yourself up. That's a lot of pain. In other words, again, don't give power to the pain, folks. You know, and by the way, forgiveness, let me talk about that adage, forgive and forget. That's one of the most unhealthy adages I've ever heard of. Because it's never healthy to do what? Forget. That's right. When people are having memory problems, we see that as an issue. I mean, we see that as something to treat, quite honestly. Yeah, no, so the goal with healthy forgiveness and the resolution of forgiveness is to recall the experience without it generating all the original pain, that raw pain that initially it caused. So that's really when you know you forgive it, when you're able to move on and you're not stuck in that pain anymore. And so really, we're the biggest beneficiary of us forgiving somebody else or the circumstance, and certainly if you were treated unfairly in a workplace, if you were abused, certainly you have every right. Now I do address this with people. If you've been mistreated, sometimes it is worth it for you to fight a circumstance. Sometimes. Wow. Sometimes it's not. So that's a cost-benefit analysis that I encourage people to adopt. Yes?
One of the places I previously worked as a contractor was the Voice of America. And this lady, who was the director, even though I was doing superior work and performance work for them, she decided to have a campaign against me where even though I was capable of being a part of the federal workforce, she sabotaged my even going full time with, really sabotaged. And I went to the civil rights office, and this lady sat down with me and she took all my notes. I've got a big thick book of what happened there. And I realized later they couldn't prove, but it was not outward, it was not something that anybody could say she was doing, but I knew it, and it was horrible.
So, and that happens sometimes, and I know that had to have been an awful experience.
But it didn't discourage me. But that was I've been a person who wanted to be in public service, and government, county or federal, or any one of those areas, I was happy. And I've been trying to get back with the federal. I did have some opportunities where I came up against the veterans, and they scored higher, of course, than anyone else.
And those may be some realities, but I want to get back to some of us who have endured and survived. It's important that you see how you survived, and it's important that you decide how you're going to be treated. Ultimately, we are in control of how we're treating people. If you allow somebody to mistreat you, and by the way, there's this great book called "No One Can Drive You Crazy If You Don't Give Them the Keys." So keep in mind, so that's about our empowerment and our decision about how we wish to be treated. One of the exercises I give a lot of my career coaching clients is to do a 2-column list. On the left side column, to label what I don't like about wherever they are in the workplace. And then to use that. See, this is where we get in the driver's seat. Wait a minute, people say, well, I'm being undervalued. Then what does it say about what you do want to experience in your work life? Well, I want somebody who recognizes my achievement. I want to be given credit for the work I do. Some people, are working in capacities where they write articles, they do the research, but somebody else gets the credit. If that's what you want, be clear about it. or if you want to be included in important meetings, be clear about this, because then when you identify what it is you want to experience, that begins to mobilize you. Now you have a sense of direction. Now you know what you're looking for, and especially those of you who are in transition, for your next work opportunity. In other words, now that puts you in much more in the driver's seat. When you go on an interview, you're going to interview them as well as they interview you. And hopefully you will do some of your interviewing and your due diligence before you even get to the interview. I always tell people, do your homework. Find out who you might know who works there. Go online and get some background about this organization or this company. You know, in other words, know, and again, let that be guided by the experience you want. And ask about the experience. So listen, you know, how do you all, you know, what's your policy on, what's the thing, telework now? How flexible are you all with your schedules? Is that something that's important to you? Be prepared to ask about it and let people know. A lot of times we make assumptions that folks are not going to give us what they want. Well, guess what? If they want you badly enough, if they feel your skill set is valuable, because they have a need to meet just like you have a need to meet. So be clear that your needs, if you're going to really be happy in your workplace, go far beyond simply the dollars and cents that provide for your material needs. So I'm a big proponent of aim for what you want, and in order for you to be empowered and also to get what you want. And let them tell you no. Sometimes we shut things down in our own minds without even giving it consideration. Okay. So again, I'll make this job loss benefit you. Purpose of, wait a minute, am I going backwards? Okay.
Do you have an online website?
Yes, I do, and you'll see that in a minute. Oh, what's no, wait. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a skill set that I'm working on. I apologize. But what's this stuff? Yeah, you want to go back?
The next back?
Yeah, no. This is good. Okay, so rebuild your confidence and get mobilized. Some of you may have attended the workshop I did on building your career confidence, which really does zero in very specific ways to think about yourself, and we're about to do a little exercise on that now. So, ways to build your confidence during joblessness. I'm going to pass this out, and the reason I'm going to pass out these cards to people is it's because I want you to keep them with you. Keep them with you so that you can remind yourself, especially when you're feeling down or you're feeling, you know, and especially those of you who are maybe experiencing some of the ageism that we know does exist, and that can sometimes make the job search period more prolonged and feel and begin to wear down our sense of optimism and hope. That's going to be important that you pull out and remind yourself. So I want you to, first of all, before you write anything down, again, we're going to do another 3-minute small group, because I want you to tell each other about your talents, your strengths, your previous work. Now you get a chance to talk about what you did, okay, and what you did well. What it is you feel good about. What were some of your accomplishments? What were some of your achievements? And also, what are your talents, skill sets, things you know you're good at doing? Somebody else talked about how a lot of times we find out what we're doing because of other people. And when I work with groups that have been together for a while, I tap right into that. Because, as I said, show up and show out. You know, show up, first of all, because when we show up, then people do get a chance to experience us. So the groups, that's a wonderful exercise. If you're in any groups where you meet on a regular basis, you know, do some kind of exercise where you kind of exchange, you know, feedback about, gee, how do I come across in this group? Get in touch with how you come across to other people. And again, the positive feedback other people have given to you about your work-related strengths. So again, this is where you now zero in on your work-related strengths so you can tap into your skill set, because if you don't believe in yourself, don't expect anybody else to. That's a lot to put on someone else, to expect them to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. So again, 3 minutes, small group again. I want you to talk about, because this is about you feeling good about this and you getting in touch with it. The other person you feel. Talk about your achievements and your, yes, you can. Yeah, you can partner with either.
My first station, I've been there 12 years. Started out in the level initially. My way up.
Oh, okay.
Skills I should
So my background is geographic information systems. Yeah, no, I hadn't heard of it. 20 years I never heard of it. So I got reports on population where English is the second language.
One time I was complimented on my resume, which I wrote as a high school graduate from one of the worst schools in the country, Chicago. Second to mine now Mississippi, years and it's worse. I had our director over at Boston said she wanted to person who wrote my resume, but she was asking for an I asked her, she said my resume stood out. And she said, quote unquote, the simplicity and honesty in my resume stood out and perhaps really a lot of so what I'm saying is I think that who we are and on paper to some extent. Somebody mentioned values, emotional or spiritual values. Without being religious, without unreligious, I don't want to talk about approaches, but you can have a code of moral ethics that reflects those I'm saying that don't somebody wants to write that answer to question, they I do that in therapy. A therapist calls me, but I don't want to answer the question. I go all around and say you're going to the way in circles. I think it's appropriate in that setting. And it's emotionally painful.
Okay. Can we come back to the larger group, please? I wanted you to have that experience of sharing with each other about what you feel good about yourself professionally. In other words, be they past achievements or accomplishments, be they your talent, skill sets. So what did you, and also the reason I passed out those little index cards is because now I want you to take about a minute to list what you got in touch with. You could either say my past achievements or my or what I accomplished. If you led a reorganization, if you accomplished a certain financial goal for a company that you work for, if you acquired a certain number of clients, if you taught a certain number, got a certain number of children to graduate, as a result, those of you who've been educators in the school system. In other words, stop and think about the achievements that you can feel good about. What are your talents, skill sets, things you know you're good at doing? And then what kind of feedback have other people given you about your professional and work-related strengths? A lot of times we don't stop and reflect on what we hear. We hear it, and sometimes it just goes right past us. Some of us have a hard time receiving compliments, and that's a whole other issue, because that's a self-esteem issue. Yes, it is. And so it is important to be able to receive as well as give positive feedback. My mother used to have the saying, a closed hand can't give away anything, but it can't receive anything either. So talk about having an open mind, again, it's about that openness of your spirit, openness of your mentality, openness towards yourself and to others. So at least jumpstart that list. Another way you all see that my skill set does not consist of technology. However, one of the things that I have found the phone immensely useful for, put it on your phone. If you're carrying around a phone every day, put that list on the phone. If you need a pick-me-up, in other words, you can just take a picture of your list. That's I found it. I did it. Take a picture of it. I got it right there. I don't have to write it on my phone. But in other words, keep something with you that reminds you, especially when you're down, especially when you've had experiences, perhaps, of having some application rejections. You haven't heard, or you haven't heard from a place you've applied to for a long time. Yes, questions, feedback.
Okay. You were talking about, the confidence and things that keep you going. And I was sitting here thinking, my grandfather. Okay. I never called him grandfather, I called him French fry. I would call him French fry because he had his own land, he made his own potatoes. So I started calling him French fry. And he owned 70 acres of land. Well, we were going through the woods one day because you have to go down to the creek to get the water out of the creek. And as we were walking, we came by this tree, and this tree, it went up like this, and it would curve, but it had full green leaves and everything on it. And I said, French fry, why is that tree leaning? He said, let me tell you. He said, that tree is leaning because the other trees around it are blocking it, and it can't get any sun. He said, if you cut that tree, if you cut the other trees around it, that tree, because the sun is right there, it starts straightening up, and it'll go straight up, like that. I said, okay. He said, well, think about this in life. If you put yourself around people who are negative, always tearing you down, your life is going to go just like that tree. If you put people around you who are encouraging you, always want the best for you, you're going to go straight up. I never forget that.
That's a powerful. That's right. So thank you for the story of French fry. and so that's important. In other words, surrounding yourself with positive people is very important. There are going to be, sadly enough, I have seen situations where there are people who, for whatever, when I left the school system, I had people who did not intentionally want to see me fail, but I had to understand that it was from their own fear. Oh my goodness, are you going to make it? How are you going to do that? And blah, blah, blah. And and I really had to realize that's about their doubts, not about their assessment of me. So part of this is coming back to yourself and seeing what you have working for you and believing it. Seeing the evidence of it. See the evidence. Remind yourself of that. And then receiving and surrounding yourself with people who do, who are on board with that. So sometimes that might require you to go outside your immediate community, folks. Sometimes that's the case. And so thank you for that very illustrative story. And what you also did, too, which is also very powerful, is coming up with something that can remind you coming up with your own story, coming up with your own experience, coming up with some allegory, something that kind of triggers that sense of who you are in your best self, your best professional self, and reminding yourself of that. And where it is that there's need for improvement, do it. Step up to that. Recognize that we can always change. I tell people we can always change our minds. We can also change. Has anybody ever learned a new skill? Yeah. Stop and remind yourself of that.
My goal is when I go for an interview to remind the employer, I have all these skills and the capabilities, but I'm always willing to learn any new computers, any new way of doing things.
Thank you for saying that. I actually had a client who was on her way to an interview, was preparing for an interview, and she felt very good about what she was able to do well, the kinds of qualities and qualifications she had that they were requiring that she already met. And then she said, but there was this one skill, it was in technology, and so it was one particular skill set that she was lacking. She said, well, so I'll just let them know that I don't have that. I said, wait, no you don't. I said, oh, please don't do that. I said, well, why shouldn't I want to be honest. I wanted to let them, I said, wait a minute, I'm not encouraging you to be dishonest. I said, but you don't have to volunteer your weakness. Right. So let them ask you that. Now, they ask you, I said, so did I role play with her? I said, so what would you say? And I said, well, I noticed, Miss So-and-so, that you didn't have anything in your resume about XYZ skill. So she said, well, I would say, I could learn. And that's it. In other words, that is about using your strengths to help you get through your weaknesses. So again, we talk about, even in education, we talk about strengths-based learning. We can build on what we have, folks. You can't build on something you feel you don't have. You can't build on your deficits. You can improve them, but it starts with feeling confident, first of all. Most of us don't like to feel failure, do we?
No.
So if that's all you're reminding yourself of, then you're really digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. And it becomes a lot harder to pull out. What was our experience like just now of getting in touch with your skill sets, your strengths, your accomplishments, your achievements?
Talking about them, expressing yourself.
Yeah, that was practice right there. So that was one of my purposes. What else? It reminds you. That's right. Was it a positive experience for most of you? Okay. And so again, this is about getting used to, and that's the other thing too, when I recommend networking and talk about the power of networking to my clients, some of them start rolling their eyes as soon as I say networking. Oh, that's so hard to do. I don't want people to think I'm begging for a job, and I don't want them to think the only reason I'm talking to them is because I'm interested. I said, well, hello, that's what networking's about. And also, what I learned myself was actually any opportunity is an opportunity to network. Now, obviously, in a social setting, you might tone down, if you're passing out the business cards. But be prepared. That's what I learned to do. I mean, I'd go to social settings initially thinking, oh, I'm just here to have a good time. And then somebody will, I get in a conversation and they say, oh, well, how can I get in touch with you? And I'm like, oh, I don't have the cards. Or they'll ask, do you have any cards? And I'm like, no, I don't have cards. and I have to write it out. So now be prepared, because even in a social setting, an opportunity might arise. I've had that happen numerous times. I've gotten jobs. I've had paid opportunities as a result of social connections. Because if somebody likes you, when you show up, when you're positive, talented, intelligent, accomplished self shows up, then people like that, don't they? Don't we tend to be attracted to? How many of you can identify talent? Most of us can identify talent. And good leaders, how many of you consider yourself to be a leader? Leaders really are good at that. Because guess what? A good leader wants to surround themselves with talented people. Because they make you look good. That's a smart leader. So this is a summary of what we covered today and of the strategies that are helpful in enabling you to overcome a lot of the negative emotions. And recognize the negative emotions make sense, they're real, but get past them. The goal is to get through them, not to get stuck in them. So again, that's why the very first thing is to adopt a positive mindset. You don't have to deny that something bad happened or that you're feeling sad in order to begin to shift to a positive mindset. How can I think about this differently? How can I see the possibilities like several of you talked about today? Again, not defining yourself, assigning meaning and purpose, believing in yourself. And so we just talked about surrounding yourself with positive, encouraging people. Again, let's look at, don't see your deficits as, again, all that you are. Don't get consumed by that. That's why it's so important to remind yourself about what you're good at first, okay? And then address them. And then, again, taking this as an opportunity to strengthen skills, or to acquire new knowledge, or to go into a new direction. And again, as we started off talking about, exercise work-life balance, folks. Again, the more and more, how many of you have hobbies? Because it's going to be important that you do find ways to reduce stress. Somebody talked about some of the other activities they're involved in, yoga, Tai Chi. What are some of your other hobbies? Travel. What else?
I have to walk.
Walk.
Hiking.
Biking?
Hiking.
Hiking. Okay, and biking.
Aerobics.
Reading.
Reading. Okay.
Museums.
Museums. And this is a wonderful place, a wonderful city for that. So stop and think about what nurtures your passion, what allows you to, it's important to take a break from this sometimes. Give your structure a break. Structure your time so that, again, you make time for other areas of your life. In other words, otherwise you can easily get consumed. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a workshop coming up. There's a notice out on the front that's standing up. Again, the same title, Lost Your Job, Don't Lose Your Mind. And then that workshop is a 3-hour workshop. It's going to be offered on 2 different dates. On Saturday, March the 3rd from 9 a.m. until noon, and then on Tuesday, March the 13th from 6 until 9 p.m. because I wanted to give people an opportunity to do it Saturday. Well, it's going to be right in my office, believe it or not, is right next door. 1629 K Street, Suite 300. So that information is there. Just a minute, excuse me. Oh, that's right. And on your handout, and also I have business cards up here for somebody who wants to sell them. Oh, let me pass this around. Those of you who want additional information, who are interested in the workshop price is currently $50 per person. However, if you refer someone who signs up, then each of you can come for $40. Okay? And so I'm going to, so those of you who are interested in additional information, I'll pass this around. Please put down your name, print please, your name and your email address. I'll get back in touch with you. Make sure you got a handout because also my contact information is at the bottom. My program is Happy and Healthy You. The U represents YOU as well as higher learning, the abbreviation. And so you can find out a little more about that. And please, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you're interested, now here's another little incentive too. Those of you who felt that, I believe 40 Plus has an evaluation form for you to fill out. Okay, so those of you who might be interested or willing to provide a testimonial about today's workshop, please reach out to me via email, and you will get a discount, a further discount on the workshop.
A testimonial?
Yes.
So how many thousand words do you want that?
If you reach out, the testimonial, let me tell you, the best testimonials talk about, the best testimonial will talk about how you felt this information impacted you, how it worked. So it's not that, oh, she was really nice, she was she was excited, blah, blah, blah. That's really not the best testimonial. The best testimonial talks about the impact on you, how this might have helped you, or what kind of change or positive result you may have earned from this. So if you're willing, and a testimonial also includes your name. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking. So for those of you, so that's the other way to get the discount, folks. If you want the $40 discount or a future discount, if this isn't the workshop you're particularly interested in, then please reach out to me and provide a testimonial. I hope that this was helpful. And that, and I enjoyed it, so I hope that the rest of you found this to be useful. Thank you very much.
We have a little momentum from 40 Plus.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
And again, you should have these on your chairs. Please take a moment and provide us your feedback. We take it very seriously. And we we try to be very responsive. If there's a topic or a speaker you're particularly interested in, please let us know. It's the only way we can build and improve our presentation. So thank you all very much. Folks who are new, raise your hand. Folks who are new, blue. All right, 1, 2, 3. We maybe lost one. I'll introduce Tom Goodwin, a member of our board. He's going to invite you to step next door and learn some more about what we offer here at 40 Plus. And again, everyone else, please continue networking. See me if you have any questions about 40 Plus, and please plan on joining us next week when we're going to play 21 questions. 21 questions about your career and your soul, and how those two are not mutually exclusive. So come join us again next week. Thank you all.
It was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.